Huh? No. Oh, I actually am not one to care about the voting and the counting, but she's lazy dork. The Hill 88, too cool for me. All right. Oh, I got to switch the audio over. Shizzle.
This is going out to Lazy Dog. It's a response rap. Check you. Lazy dog, you are pretty cool, but you must admit that you look like a fool. Cause though I like your style and I like your flow, you gotta admit that girl is the way to go. Cause she's got eyebrows, hair and eyeballs, she talks a lot and constantly stalls. But though people say she's whack, she never fights and never hits back. But I don't know why I'm rapping to you, cause I can't rap wickedly like you do. I'm just trying to groove this beat. If you don't like it, you can feel my heat. Rerun. I don't know why I'm can't rap wickedly like you do. I'll be trying to remember the girl who like the country of murder. Ink. Yeah. She's a nigga, my wizard. What, motherfucker? I mean, stuff that, didn't I? I have no street cred. Ah!
Oh, you have no street cred, that's for sure. Okay. Are we rolling, Ed? Yes, sir. All right, welcome to the fourth. Birthday cake?
Yes.
All right. I actually have some notes here. First important note, if you want more points, you go to EECS 601. And you can sign up for independent study. Is it on? Yes, I think it is. And you can sign up for independent study and get more points. So for Jim, is Jim here? All right, so Jim, do that. And someone else asked me that they wanted 5 and they only got 3. Forget who it was. If you wanted to do that, you could. Through EECS 601. We saw Lazy Dork. Oh yeah, I've been wanting to show you this theme song for a while. So here comes the theme song. You know, what happened to it? What the hell happened? Here we go. All right, you ready?
Did I tell you that?
Oh, whoa! And the two of them decide to start a media band. Did you catch that line about as we jack our TVs into the CDs? Okay. So historically, that was the second shockwave animation ever created. All right, just in case you cared. All right. So here are these notes. So we did that finally. I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks, it turns out, because the day I fly is one class. That's the 15th. Then the 17th, we're going to do a remote class. And then the next week, we're going to do 2 remote classes. So it's going to be 3 remote classes. And to do that, we need to practice Adobe Connect. So we'll schedule some time next week, maybe even during class, to do that. So we're all comfortable with Adobe Connect. Okay, what I tried to do on Tuesday was make clear to everybody what these projects would be and what these servers would be that would be in this open digital city platform. I probably didn't do too good of a job at that. And as I was driving down to Columbus yesterday, I came up with 4 projects. So I'm going to give you guys, I don't know what, 10 minutes, maybe 15 more minutes, and after that I'm assigning projects. And here it is up on the board. And we're going to do this teams, because we have certain people in the class that aren't necessarily programmers. So we need to have jobs for them, and that'll be called manager. Okay? And then there are certain Greek weak geekettes who don't want heavy load, want something nice and lightweight. And where I come from, that's called documentation or testing in QA, right? So we're going to have roles for everybody. And originally I put down senior programmer, and then I put down junior programmer, and then of course I realized, well, of course no one will sign up for junior programmer. So it's just senior programmer and programmer. And the subliminal message here is, and this is the best way to scare you away, is of course the senior programmer will be responsible for the code working and designing it. So if you don't want to take on that responsibility, do not call yourself a senior programmer, right? You can just be a normal programmer, right? And then there's this voodoo black art stuff, which I've alluded to earlier, called CSS HTML. I think I asked earlier, there was like 1 or 2 people who said they knew it. CSS HTML. Okay, all right, so we will need CSS HTML people. Jim, earlier, right before you walked in, EECS396 is the vehicle you use to do an independent study. All right? I should be up there as one of the sections. It's a drop-down. You can decide how many points you want to fundamentally pay for. And there was somebody else also who said they wanted 2 extra points. So that is the vehicle to get the points, okay? So though I don't want to dictate to you what your project should be, I also need to give you a real-world reality check of, like, you don't get to sit around and putz around and be a lump. So I will be assigning these tasks unless someone's going to, whose arm is just going to reach for the sky right now and tell me what they want to do. Go. Documentation. There you go. I love you. And I forgot your first name.
Barbie.
Barbie, do you want to do documentation too? That's 2. Megan, can I assume you want to be a manager? Or documentation? Okay. You want to be a tester? A manager. And you want to be a manager. What do you want to be? All right, what do you want to be?
I can do CSS HTML. What is testing?
Oh, dude.
I
tell you what, let's have a test to figure out what testing is. That would be the proper, and then we can do the QA on the testing to make sure that D-Bolt didn't let in some backdoor and let some Republican guys tweak the numbers. Okay?
I don't know what I want to do, if I want to do testing or programming.
We'll work it out.
I could do the programming or the CSS HTML.
Okay.
So testing is finding holes in other people's code.
Well, dude, it starts with somebody like me who starts clicking until it crashes.
Awesome. I want to be a tester.
All right. John, can I assume you want to be a manager? Okay. That actually was not what I was expecting, and you got it. This is psychological. Go ahead.
I'd be a programmer or CSS HTML.
This is really interesting. I just want to have you see what it's like from my point of view, right? I come from a world where if you told a programmer what to do, first thing he's going to ask is, where's the fucking money, right? How much are you paying me? And you're going to get attitude, and the better the programmer, the better the attitude. And if you remember last week, I asked you all, what did you want to do? I got nothing. I got a couple of ideas from Steve, right? So what I actually meant when I said I'm going to wait for a few minutes for the hand to reach the sky was some project ideas that you wanted to do. Megan.
I have an idea, and I don't really have an idea how it will happen. I think now.
Ho, ho, ho. Is it on? Ay. Okay, Megan, I'll just turn it on. How about that? Ching.
Oh, thank
All
you.
right.
So I think these days around the world, any country could constantly getting the
nature
Yo,
disaster.
dude, we set up power strips for you. Come in the center here today, okay? All right, go ahead, Megan.
Because of the global warming and everything, every country is actually getting this big threat of natural disaster. No matter it's hurricane or it's typhoon or earthquake. And I was thinking about maybe we can set out a system, building a digital city, allow people to deal with emergency. So what happened is that what kind of resources they need, where needs help, what's the situation, and also there's a lot of children. They suddenly lost their family. They're just totally become orphan, like suddenly. And
okay, but Megan, let me go through the sequence here. So here is the tsunami's coming, and I'm going online to go log in to check the. No, Megan, that's not going to work.
Not
okay,
okay. There's a way that you can keep the information flow, like
right.
transferring.
If you had the implant, and then there was like a little solenoid and it started buzzing, you might get a clue. But typically, people aren't going to be using their. I mean, only geeks will like go on Twitter to figure out what's going on. I mean, but anyway, but we love your idea, Megan. All right, hit me.
So actually, I think this is a sort of a great idea, but mostly for disaster relief. So you have disaster relief workers coming in from different areas. They might have some infrastructure with them, but typically they don't.
Right.
So a dashboard, a digital city could be a really, really useful thing for disaster relief workers to schedule supplies dropped into a certain area, or we found that so many people in what state of injury.
Right. There's an interesting side story about that with Ray Ozzie and Groove that I'll tell later. Remind me, okay? Let's give it to Steve.
Do you know of any way of doing cryptographic identities over, like, say, MDNS or something?
I'm sure there is. There's probably 7 founded startups.
How about with, like, say, mobile devices? Like, I want to walk into a bar or, a cafe and have the cafe know that I'm in there, for instance.
Yeah.
So I'd like to, start doing the infrastructure for that.
Pass the mic down. He is the DJ. He knows what he says. Down. Keep it down. Keep it rolling. Okay. Hit it.
What if we did a project based on page scraping and we could submit websites and page scrape them and put it on our dashboard? For example, Woot, because I like shopping at Woot.
Oh, wait, help me understand. So you're scraping for what?
For content.
Content?
Content.
So how is that different than just a scraper?
Because it puts it on your dashboard.
In a particular place.
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate that. Hand it to Barbie.
Returning to the disaster recovery idea, you could also use it for people who are trying to locate their loved ones after they've been evacuated, or after they're injured, they're in the hospital, they want to tell their loved ones where they are or how to contact them.
Got it. Like a bulletin board, pegboard, like a cork share, something. Okay, sorry. All right, go ahead.
I agree with Barbie on that. It should definitely be something more after the fact, because you're going to need a lot of maybe too much hardware for anything during the disaster relief and evacuation.
Right. Yeah, it's really after the fact.
It's not going to be available if it's a hurricane.
Hand it to Zach. All right. We're almost done. We're almost done beginning. And then you're next.
Well, first, I just have a question regarding this disaster relief. When do you necessarily, I was under the I'm just worried about infrastructure. The disaster normally, and I did late, so apologies, and maybe I missed this, but there's no infrastructure necessary to support any of these things necessarily after a disaster. So, I'd love to tweet about I need to find my family, but I just don't know how I'm going to do that because I don't have a cell. AT&T is not going to still be doing it, especially.
And remember, and it's a two-way thing, right? Not only have you to look for them, but somebody has to be doing the data entry of all the people we found. So it's severely problematic.
Running from a tsunami. So.
Okay, pass the mic back. Now, let alone the fact that the particular criteria for these assignments, as I'm sure Mr. Professor in the back row is thinking, is, well, wait a minute. We're already 2 weeks in. We got 13 more weeks to go, and you're students. So what's the likelihood of any of those ideas? Okay, so the definition of a project would be something that's malleable enough that we can go through a cycle. Code can be brought in. We can look at it and review it in class. We can work together as teams. I've kind of designed these ideas I have so that there can be these kind of core projects. If you buzz through the basic stuff quickly first, then there could even be ancillary side ones too. So that's not up there, that's up here. I'm going to get to that. Keep the mic rolling.
Okay, I had another idea completely unrelated.
Go.
Something like Yahoo Answers or Stack Overflow for local things. You know, people ask questions, where's the best place to eat? Other people.
And it's just the accumulated knowledge base?
Right.
Got it. With reputation?
Yes, definitely.
Totally. Okay.
Building off his previous idea, what if we sort that based on user preferences?
Did you say sorted or snorted?
Sorted.
Oh, okay. I wasn't
So
sure.
if I really like Chinese food or sushi, I would get I'll just get all the sushi restaurants in the area.
Yeah, sorted. Okay. All right, hit it.
All right. What about taking maybe an idea like that? Like, what about Yelp meets like case professor reviews, course reviews? Anyone who's used that PeopleSoft software, it's not good.
Right.
It is not good. And so if you could have something, a database that puts that together, polls, like, because course reviews are good and it's great, but viewing them in ASCII text on a endless page is no good.
Right. Got it.
Yeah.
I'm looking for Mr. Open.case.edu.
I like Steve's idea of,
Is he coming?
of a coffee shop knowing that I'm there.
He's not here today? Because I'm out there fighting the fight for him. All right. Cool out on the mic. Here's the idea. So we got a good project like this, a nice small malleable thing, will be so rich in potential that if 5 people working on it, they might get 5 different things out of it. Okay? So I've devised this crazy scheme to have 4 projects that there could even be variants on them that will achieve my agenda, your agenda, are simple enough to achieve, and we can all learn some real basic project management stuff along the way. And for all you programmers who think that you're going to get to be managers, ha! All right? So we're going to assign the people who are the non-programmers to be the managers, okay? And then anybody who shows any sign of life with CSS, HTML, we're going to put them to work. And all those people are really terrified of workload. They're going to do testing and docs, okay? And all the rest of you can actually write code, okay? What a concept. Now, the reason why I pitched this dashboard, and I talk about dashboards because it's the premise of this theory I have of a distributed architecture. And unless you were sleeping last or on Tuesday, you would have heard something about these outlines that are in the dashboard. Now, I can tell you right now that this idea, as of this moment, does not exist on the planet Earth. So for 10 points, what will be at the core of all the projects? The outline. And if I had 4 disparate projects, and each of them had an outline, well then we can start to test the theory of the conjecture of a distributed architecture, right? Okay. So let me kind of work backwards. One of the projects should be a utility to go query a URL and discover the outline. It's a really simple kind of browser thing. It's like plug in a URL, look at that page. While you're at it, what else will we pick up along the way, Steve?
While we're grabbing the page?
Yeah, micro formats, right? So we're going to look at this page, and we're going to display what micro formats are in there, and then what the outline structure is that's in there. And then we're going to do a little peek poke on those fields. Okay? If you want to go further to make it look like an outliner, you can. But that will be one of the projects, right? Now, let me just drill down for that for a second to convert it in case anybody's lost here, okay? The premise is that we're going to treat all different kinds of software the same way. We're going to call these different kinds of software dashboards, okay? And there is going to be, in every kind of software, there's either an about me or a contact us or something that describes the site, right? That's the dashboard page. Okay? So in other words, in some, or a blog or a social networking thing, right? Those are all pieces of software, online software, that have this aspect to it. So we're then going to stick an outline into that page. We're going to have this standardized schema for that outline. And then the first project will be a utility that will go query that page, display the outline, display what other microformats are in there. Could you hand the mic over to Steve? Because Steve needs to tell these people about microformats. Steve, please tell them about microformats.
Okay, cool. So microformats are basically little agreed upon standards that you can stick into web pages embedded in the HTML tags and extract information out of them with. So like if you want to, have on a page that has your profile a little microformat saying, here's my name, here's my contact information in a mutually agreed upon format that allows automated services to discover it and use it later.
Right, so as we were all fighting over micro content, which is the general category, right? So quick history. So if a blog post was a permalink, a title, a body of text, a time and date stamp, and an author, and some tags, so that's the generic structure of a blog post. What microformats would do, what micro content would do would say is that now I'm going to type that blog post, and I'm going to have other related metadata. So if it's a review, it's going to say what kind of review. Oh, restaurant review. Okay, restaurant review. Another schema. Name of restaurant, ethnicity, price range, favorite dishes, etc. Right? If it's a review of a hotel, room cost of the rooms, what kind of rooms, right? If it's an event, right? Oh, it's an event, so it's got a venue, it's got a start and time ending, right? So in other words, the core structure of this blog post, this permalink, gave us a new kind of data type, and then microcontent types these things out. In parallel to that came these efforts, and it was really an offshoot of the HTML folks who said, well, we want to start embedding structured tags into these pages. So microformats are only relevant to HTML pages. So they aren't a system that, for instance, provides metadata to a feed or metadata to a file. It's only metadata to this thing called an HTML page, which is why I complained, and then they all ostracized me and kicked me out of the inner club, right? Anyway, so that's the long explanation of microformats, right? So this thing about our browser, our outline browser, not only is it going to go and it's going to look for the outline and display it and allow you to peek and poke into it, but it's going to also display microformats too, all right? Now, why is having a utility like that so important? Because the other 3 projects, 4 projects, 5 projects, are going to be trying all these wacky things with outlines, and how do you know if it's working or not? Well, it's nice to have a debugger to go look at it, right? So you see the method of the madness there, all right? Now, last week, or I keep saying last week, on Tuesday, I talked about a notion of distributed access controls, okay? We're also going to talk about a thing called distributed friending. Because the ultimate lock-in in a closed world is when you, the vendor, possess the social graph, the members of that group, that network. And the ultimate barrier we want to tear down is that data silo. The fact that the social graph is all on Mark Zuckerberg's hard drive, is all on MySpace's hard drive, it's all on Friendster's hard drive. That's the thing, that's the centralization. Why does Evan Williams have your balls in a vice? Because it's all on Twitter's hard drive, his entire membership, which then means he creates a namespace and he owns it. So one of the things we want to do, we want to use our outlines to do distributed friending. Okay? Now I've got an implementation scheme for that. It's not the best one, it's not the only one, it's an example of one. And if there was a really hot senior programmer in that project, he might slap me around and come up with a better one. Right? But I got one version, and it would be done with WordPress, and it would be a WordPress plugin. And I actually prepped people aggregated to be able to talk to it, and it could talk to other WordPress plugins, in theory, a movable type plugin, and we could then demonstrate distributed friending using these outlines. Right? So that's project number 2, is the notion of distributed friending. Okay. Now, let me refer to my notes here for a second. Let me project number 3. Are y'all starting to see the method of my madness here? We want to do some sort of shared server, right? It might be the timeline. It might be events. It might be a business directory. The idea is that its explicit purpose is to be a server that's part of a digital city. And I actually think the easiest one and the sexiest one and the one that I can get my friend Robert Scoble to help us out on would be a shared server of web celebrities. All right? So imagine this sequence. Poor Robert Scoble. Every time there's a new service, like Friend Feed, do you remember this thing called Plurk that came along? Right? Anyway, about every 2 to 3 days, one of these things comes up. And based upon whether Robert Scoble feels like it or not, he can go, I bless you, and he brings in 50,000 people, and those 50,000 people bring in 500,000 people, and you get the idea, right? And each time Robert Scoble does it, it's a manual process, and whatever the mechanism inside that new service is how those people come in. And nowadays, almost everybody uses Facebook Connect or Google Friend Connect to bring people in. So what happens if there was a shared server, and it's XML, and it's a struct, and that struct is web celebrity. And all it was this server of web celebrities. And instead of having to go to Plurk and go to Friend Feed and go to Twitter and go to Facebook and go all these places and friend Robert Scoble at each place, you just go to the one place and friend Robert Scoble. And then what Robert Scoble says to you, I'll tell you what, as I decide to bless each of these new services, you come along with me for the ride. So by you friending me on this shared other thing, I get to build up and centralize my social graph of followers, and you guys I'll take you on a ride. Once a week, once a month, whatever. Okay? So that's this crazy idea of a kind of a shared server. I've been talking about other kinds of shared servers, and again, I do want to at least make the senior manager, the senior programmer, and the manager kind of get some ownership, so I'll let them decide and tweak out exactly what that shared server is, but that's an idea. Okay. Now, what was that final thing I wanted to do? I might even refer to some notes. Once in a while, I actually write things down. The best part is when I write them down while driving in the car. Okay, so again, remember I told you we've got lots of different agendas and lots of different things. So we have this platform that I wrote and all this shared code, and there's all this stuff in it, like over 1 million lines of code. And there's all these things that we'd like to see happen. One of them is something called RPX. I think I talked with you earlier about that. That's a service by Janrain. And it allows you to come in with any kind of an ID, and it'll aggregate them together, and so you can use any kind of ID, right? I had other ideas. Oh yeah, as of this moment, we don't have Google Friend Connect, something called the Social Graph API. There's little things here, little things there, that again, see, because I don't know you guys' experience level or ability level, that, you know, even asking something as simple as, can you add this component into this existing platform in the ID section? That might be enough to keep you guys busy. It might be enough there to learn. Maybe just adding the dashboard outline into People Aggregator is enough. Just getting the outline into People Aggregator and have it reflect that person's individual account and their friends and all their data. That might be just itself a nice little project. Because again, I'm trying to think pragmatically what you can pull off in a fairly short period of time. That isn't too much work. All right? Now notice I conveniently left the number 5 up there because I keep getting convinced that at some point will come something. And maybe this is not to say that your idea is not a good idea. It would take like months and months and months and months and months to do that. Go.
Because there's a lot of people already found something like that. So you can type that textbook, you can enter, you can sort out all different prices,
This is the mic. Well, actually, you know, Meg, it's funny you say that because there aren't many people doing that, but there are people doing servers. There aren't necessarily shared servers. Why don't you repeat what you were just saying? Oh, hit it.
My question is, I think it's a great idea. Number 3, shared service, shared server. I don't know what the difference between what is already available out there. Maybe just to share different type of information. Like what I can think of is like the books. When you buy a book, you go to those places, then they can find the cheapest one for you, or stuff like that. There's something different than what you propose.
Yeah, that's different.
Okay.
All right. So let me. So you're thinking of sharing in the sense that a proprietary service gets up there, and what they're offering is some data that they somehow found this data, and then the consumers can come in and share it. Okay, my interpretation of a shared server. Matt, is there something I can do to help you?
Yeah, a quick response there. How is that? Isn't that the adware, where you have someone else telling you to buy this, to get this?
There's like 10 problematic things about what she said.
Yeah.
Ads are one of them, okay? Here's my crazy idea, okay? That Apache is something you use in a stack, right? Wi-Fi is infrastructure we use. Water, electricity. If you've ever used Friend Connect or anything with Facebook, or even just when you're in Windows and you use the new window utility. See, there isn't something called a window. The window's used in an application. So the server I'm talking about is not the end result application. It's a piece of the puzzle that's a component that gets used in a stack that your mashup is different than his or hers. Does that make sense? When I mean shared server, software infrastructure. So for instance, let's think that web celebrities are something that everyone wants to use in different ways. So we would have this database of web celebrities, and if 5 different people showed up, they'd use it 5 different ways. Events, jobs, business directory, webcam locations. Those are all kinds of servers. An ID system. Those are all servers that become infrastructure. Does this make any sense? Tim? Yes? No? Okay, good. I get a half nod. Okay. All right, anyway, those are 4 projects. What they have in common is that they all can use the dashboard outline. See the method of my madness? Because one of the frustrations of an inventor is when you invent something new, and even more frustrating when you invent an architecture or approach for distributed architectures, is that you're building conjecture on top of conjecture on top of conjecture. So as soon as you can plug in any of those things and even get the raw prototype or the mock-up of it, well then that means that the other thing can now be mocked up against it, and then you're starting to put these pieces of the puzzle together. And that's where I need you guys to do it. So there's 4 different things that all would have some kind of this form of this outline. And in the next 20 minutes, you can come up with some better ideas. That's what we're going to do for the semester. Does that make sense, Zach?
Yeah.
Are you frustrated and pissed off or what?
I'm not pissed off. I'm not trying to think of a better idea, but one common thing I'm trying to think of to merge how to do the outline framework. I'm sure it can be done. Just trying to think through it. Is that a lot of everything, Steve and even the disaster, all the ideas had geography. Like the location, there's a micro format, the geo format.
Absolutely.
So I'm trying to think of something the way we can fit the outline. Maybe it's number 5, maybe it's the other one,
I got a great one, because guess what we didn't do? And you all know that Steve liked to wear his colors. He's waving his flag, right? And what do we not have on here? We don't have anything taking advantage of Google APIs. So why don't we do something with Google Maps, right? Let's just do that with an outline. Build a little thingy that takes in geo and puts it on the map. Not too hard, right? You see what I'm trying to get at? Nice baby steps, something simple. We can get the code up and running. We can analyze the code. We can stick the outline in there. We can get it interacting with other things. And then we can always go do something else later or be done. But that's my idea, is that there's these different things that all of them have something to do with an outline, okay? Now, what I want to do is I want to go over the rest of these notes. It's probably going to take us the rest of the class. And then here's my challenge. Not only am I barely getting to know your names, because I'm hitting Stack Overflow myself, and I have my own reputation and credibility to query. But I also do have no clue what ability level and what you can do. I mean, I'm going to guess that Steve's a senior programmer. I'm going to guess that so anybody who wears black fingernail polish thinks he's all that. And okay, dude, I would hope you do. So ideally, what we're going to do is we're going to create these lists of people associated with the roles, and then by next Tuesday, we then attach, and all cluster together into these teams. Does that make sense? Okay. All right, so let me go finish these notes. That's what we just did. We just talked about the project ideas, both individual and solo. We also don't have anything that's a widget or an open social container. So that could be another project. Oh, here's a good discussion. What's the difference between a widget and an open social container? Anybody like to wax eloquently on that one? Okay, well, so the widget is this HTML embed that's got some HTML in it. Open social has got this certain set of rules and certain APIs and certain protocols it takes advantage of. But widgets are really the building blocks of the distributed web. And only until these cross-domain hacks came in did MySpace have to prevent a standard generic HTML widget. So would somebody like to tell me what is the standard methodology for delivering a widget nowadays? Steve? Flash container, right? So you got ClearSpring, you got Gigya, you got Widgetbox, you got these standard platforms that tens of thousands of content providers plug their content into this widget thing. So now you're over here on someone's page and you see this widget, and at the bottom of it says grab this. So you click your mouse, and this little flash thing has built a little UI. It comes up and says, well, where would you like to send this widget? And it's got all the code and stuff to send it to Facebook and MySpace and Dig and whatever. You get how that viral effect happens? All right? Those are all, so in other words, the essence of Web 2.0, the essence of this open web, is that instead of expecting people to come to your site goes to them. All right? And that's very, very key. Okay. So Shindig is a server that allows you to do an open social container. Make sure everybody has a copy of the textbook. I just was talking with David Ullman, who was just here. He, by the way, brought the power cord and extension cord, right? But we also talk about the user interface of MediaVision, and we'll be getting into that. And that's actually something Megan has something to do with. Here's an interesting thing we didn't bring up before. So in this book, I went on a 1.5 year long journey to figure out what is this distributed architecture? And one of the best ways to confuse people is to come up with the name of something. Like, hey, Zach, what is the open mesh? How do I know what the fuck is the open mesh, right? I mean, that would be your classic question. So if I told you, hey, I wrote this book called The Open Mesh. First of all, nobody cares about the idea if it's an idea. Like, I created a blog post on the open mesh. So what? Oh, look, I created a book on the open mesh. Oh, you've got the artifact. It could even be blank pages. They wouldn't care. But one of the things about calling something that people don't know is that they naturally ask, well, what's the open mesh? And I'm making it up as I was going along. But after 1.5 years, I can tell you conclusively that the open mesh is us. That we are the mesh that glues together all this mess, this chaos. So that's one of the conclusions I came to. And that dashboards are this key thing. So here we are biting deep into this conjecture I have that these outlines can be this bonding mechanism between these disparate dashboards. Okay, by the way, it has come to my attention that certain people in this class think that since I'm so good at buzzwords, that that's all I am is just buzzwords. And I embrace your slacker cynicism. but we are here to turn buzzwords into some real code, okay? Is that okay? Because buzzwords are great, but it's also about putting up or shutting up. Oh, speaking of buzzwords, here's another one I invented. PKB. You know what a PKB is? Personal knowledge base. Over and over again, we see in our industry that technology crosses over from one area to the other. So desktop publishing started as a personal thing, and it kind of snuck into the enterprise through the side door and saved enterprise billions of dollars a year. Okay? IM, messaging, started as a consumer thing and has now been embraced wholly by enterprise. AI, which clearly starts off as a research AI enterprise thing, is making it over into the consumer world. You know, Pandora, all right? Knowledge bases have been traditionally something that is in the enterprise domain, all right? So what is a personal knowledge base? Well, I happen to have one over here on my blog. I think I showed it to you earlier. And what it is, I'm defining it as a history, my archive of all the shit I've ever done, ever. All right? And that would be not only just the media files and the artifacts, but it would also be the knowledge itself, a representation of the knowledge. So here I've got all these different kinds of versions of myself. Did I play the theme song yet? I did, right? Okay. All right, so there's me. I am a reggae enthusiast. I have 5 children. I used to be famous. I'm a CEO, and I'm this guru guy. And if you want to go click on something like, what is portable contacts? Boom, and you'd go to portable contacts, right? So it's an image map, representation of this knowledge that is me, okay? That's a PKB. Now, probably not now, but hopefully by the springtime, I'm going to be teaching this class in multiple locations. I'm pretty close to closing with Youngstown State. I was just in Columbus yesterday pitching for OSU. I'm meeting with the University of Akron next week, Lorraine County Community College. The theory is we're going to have multiple versions of this class. So then what we would do is we'd have a SIG set up that would be for outside the campus scenario where everyone would come together as one. Do we know what SIG stands for? There you go. We're getting our buzzwords rolling off the tips of our lips. Now, Matt, the other day you asked a question about virtuous circle. I don't think you got the answer. You don't remember, then that makes it even simpler. Okay. All right, so we were just talking about micro formats and micro content. And we started this organization called structuredblogging.org to help promote that, to take this idea of this micro content stuff, these standardized schemas. And that was great that there's micro formats, but we also needed them for files and for feeds, okay? So that's what structuredblogging.org was trying to do. It was a total failure. And 2 years later, 3 years later, Tumblr was formed. Do we all know about Tumblr? Tumblr's like a nice little short little blog thing. And it's exactly a micro content editor, right? And so it's funny, as I looked at all the money and time and effort I poured into People Aggregator, sure enough, we spent a huge amount of time making sure that the source code of structuredblogging.org, which were a WordPress plugin and all these free libraries, were exactly matched to the source code that was inside of People Aggregator. Ha ha ha, thinking that all these people would find that's really valuable. And of course, nobody gave a damn, right? So over and over again, we're constantly making mistakes. And the trick here is to learn from your mistakes, okay? Show the mural, I'll do that later. Nice big picture of this thing I painted in my backyard. Oh shit, I forgot to ask them. All right, so we do know that you have until tomorrow at 5 to sign up for EECS396 or whatever else you want to do. It's still on me to get a TA. Now I had this crazy idea, not knowing about TAs, that I would enlist you all to help document and scribe the goings-on of the project. See, if you think it's torrential and complicated and just jumping around now, we're just warming up. It's going to get more and more complicated, and I'm going to get more and more tangential. And as fast as you can ask me a question, I'm going to give it back. And what I need to do is capture that and get it into the book. So ideally, we'd have someone who was the appointed scribe who would be literally taking the edits, whether they're typos or changes or additions or whatever, and keeping track of that shit. So then at the end of the day, if you haven't noticed, from the moment the time the class is recorded, it's about 24 hours from we get it uploaded, spliced up, and put back online. All right, so I don't know if you all are noticing that, and we've already broken the UI of MediaVision. It's got way too many files, and Dave Ullman was just talking about the naming conventions, and we've got lots of work to do. Only until you use software do you see whether it works or not. And that, I think the term there is agile or iterate or whatever. But I was thinking to get somebody from the class to do that. It might even become, because reputation systems are all kind of malleable, we might even make it a position of pride, of honor. And you go, oh, Professor Canter, can I be the scribe this week? So that's what I yearn for. Somewhere maybe by turkey time we'll get that together. Oh yeah, and so we talked about non-programming roles and projects, so I think I've got that worked out, how non-programming stuff can happen. Inspiration, the usage of points. Okay, so I have a photo in here. I'll show it later. And this is a kid thing. So this is relevant for John, who's about to have kids, but I don't think anybody else in this room has kids, right? Okay. So, you don't want to spank them, but by definition, kids are wild animals that you train to, like you put a bit in their mouth and you attach a rope, and you gradually let the rope out and give them more and more leash, because they will run in front of a car or put their hand in fire. I had my daughter go, look, Daddy, scissors. And she just cut off her hair and handed it to me. So you really need to kind of train children. You have a responsibility as a parent. And one of the ways you do that is by manipulating them. First thing you do is if they're bitching and crying, you go, look over there, and you distract them from whatever they're crying about. And next thing you do is you dangle carrots in front of their faces. So there's a standard thing that's like this magnet board. And on it says, chores, make your bed, read a book, obey your parents. And if you do that, you get little magnets. And it says, Sunday through Saturday, it's like all the days of the week. And so we were trying to train my daughter to do this, and she wanted this, excuse the expression, Barbie doll. And so we said, okay, if you're good enough, you can earn enough points to get a Barbie doll. The problem was that the number of points she needed to accumulate was more than she could accumulate in a week. And of course, the magnet board's only 1 week. And my wife turns to me and says, dude, isn't this what computers are for? Shouldn't we have a persistent storage of the points so we could accumulate them? And if there's bad, can't we take away from the points? That was the inspiration. Aha moment. Shit, I could apply that to ex-auto workers. I mean, we're all just trained guinea pigs in one sense or the other. So all you got to do is go to a cognitive psychology class to learn that. Oh yeah, so we are trying to use the microphone now to get the questions down on audio, but for the first week we didn't do that. So my promise is I'm going to go back and I'm going to have to transcribe some of the questions and overlay the text onto the video. So we have proper documentation. I had some stories about aggregating the aggregators. I think I'll pick up on that next week. Oh, there's also a really interesting section here in the beginning of the book. And I really want you to read this, okay? And it's, I don't suppose anyone can name this. This is from the Larchmere Porch Fest. And you probably don't know about it because they just had it for the first time. But all around Larchmere, they were having bands play on porches. That was pretty cool. All right, so I talk about the goals of the project. This is right up in the beginning, and a proposed timeline, which of course we've already fallen off the schedule. Go over the basic components of the city. Lots of components. I show this chart, which is right out of the presentation. And then I go into how we're going to utilize dashboards in our digital city. And the different kinds of dashboards, which we've gone over already. And put in the dashboards to use, and how through workforce development and technology it kind of drives down into health and drives down into local foods. So I actually want to get feedback from you guys. I want to figure out whether this makes sense or not, or if I'm just completely full of shit. All right? So that means that you have to read it. And then we're going to have a discussion about dashboards and the virtuous circle. And by the way, if you search for, I think it was volunteerism, that comes up in Google. I think it's because the statue's called volunteerism. But you have a question? It's right up in the beginning. So it's pages 6 through 24. Oh, and then it continues on. It goes, whoops, sorry, refocus. We're going to focus. It continues on, the virtuous circle and a day in the life. So these are things right out of the presentation, right? Now, point of order about the PDF, it's off by 1. Because the way the PDF converted in, and then you print it out, and ideally when you make your printout, you go up to the PDF display and you have it going to two-way, so that way it prints up 2 pages at a time, so it's formatted the way it's in the book, right? But to make the two-way printout right, I had to add 1 extra blank page up in the front, so that it correlates right. So all the page numbers are off by 1 from the physical book. Right, so when I say 24, I meant 25. Yeah, another question?
Do you have a searchable version of the PDF? Because right now it's all just graphics. You can't select text and
can I ask, I'm going to turn this back on you. Are you telling me that you can't search a PDF? Is that true?
No, there's no text in the PDF. It's just a picture of each page.
You have to.
And so there's no text of it because it's been converted to bitmaps.
Yeah.
So fucked up. Okay, look. Short Adobe. This company is going out of business. In fact, they already are out of business. They just don't know it. I'm serious. These people are like thriving dinosaurs, for some reason kept alive by some archaic ecosystem. How fucked up can you get? You know what they brag about? They say, look, when you put your text into PDF, it'll be safe. No one will be able to get to it. That's like a feature for them. And what were you saying?
You can't have text in it. It's just as it is. It's only.
Okay, so that goes back to how did I even give you the PDF in the first place? I use a utility called Qt PDF, which goes in, pretend like it's a printer. So when I print in my my book layout tool, I can output a PDF. In other words, the other people that I may have to go postal on is Blurb itself. Because for somebody like me, you don't want to be locking up my data inside a tool. And my books, my content right now, is locked up inside of the Blurb tool because it was so easy to use. Which is, by the way, a symbolic statement about Web 2.0 in general. You make it so easy that the users get sucked into this roach motel and they never come out. So my apologies to you guys. Okay, so here's the question. Who wants to go rebuild the entire book in Quark Express so we can get text and decent PDFs, right? Because you have this ugly watermark on the PDF as well, right? So that's what it will take. I'd have to completely re-render the entire book. Question?
Couldn't you just OCR it?
Well, okay, so now I'll ask you, so who would like to completely OCR the entire book?
Do you want to just retype it instead?
You get the point, right? Later on when I'm famous and this entire room's filled with people, and of course the front row's got all the babes who just want to like stare at me, you know, then we'll get some of them to do the volunteer work. But until then, we're down here in bootstrap mode, dudes and dudess. Okay, so we talked about more project ideas. The distro friending made it in. The WP plugin made it in. The distro access controls. All right, so that's probably one of the harder ones to actually get distributed access controls working with other apps. So I'm not going to ask for that. Question? What? Oh, back to the notes. Sorry, thank you. I've been just reading over here. Implementation of the dashboard outline. So I really think that's going to be a really good usage of our time. Then there's this XRD thing. So in fact, Aaron Hammer-Lahav of Yahoo, who invented this stuff, first of all, it was called XRDS, which was a simple version of XRD. And then he thought, oh, I'm making it too complicated to call it simple. So I won't call it simple, so it won't be complicated. And so that's a spec that's in flux. So hopefully we'll be able to, like if someone called up Aaron and said, dude, Marc Canter told me we're going to use this technology, and so you got to make a decision and freeze it. I mean, he was talking about freezing it back in April. So I think we can get them to freeze it so then we could properly implement it. Outline the debugging tool. Oh yeah, here was a quiz I was going to ask everybody. What does CRUD stand for? And, come on, don't make me go to Google. Delete. Create, read, update, delete. Okay. And this drawing here, again, in the spirit of something I was doing while driving down to Columbus yesterday, is an example of another one of my on-the-fly architectural drawings. So there's the outline in the middle. There's the shared server, which there could be a lot of different kinds of data types. There is the DSO friending. Can you see off the bottom? Yeah. There's the utility, and then there's modifying people aggregator, all hanging off of there. And you're probably wondering, well, Mark, how come you wrote it down in the corner over there? That's just how it was, is I was driving the steering wheel and writing. It was a little difficult to get it centered. So, all right, so that's what I'm talking about. This is a different kind of class today. See, you thought I was just going to be lecturing all the time and being really boring. But I try to mix it up. And I'm now ready to assign tasks, because nobody else has said, you know, Mark, I've changed my mind. I hate your project ideas. So let's go create some teams right now. You into it? I am. Okay. Oh, does that come down? No. All right, who wants to be the manager? This goes up? It's fine. Let's just do it. We'll wing it. We'll just like, you know. All right, who wants to be the manager of the outline browser utilities? Okay, here we go. Here's the idea of the 4, maybe 5 projects. Thank you, Ed. Okay. One would be a really simple utility. Its job is to, that wasn't what I meant. No, leave that there. I was imagining this going up. So I could have more of the board. There you go, thank you. Perfect, okay. So, simple utility that will look at a page and display the outline that's in that page, peek and poke into those fields, and also display microformats that's in that page, okay? A project that's really a WordPress plugin that allows you, that displays on the blog post buttons that say, add as a friend. So I come along, because you know what's called the blog roll in a blog, right? And it's that list of people there. Well, that's all done manually, right? So let's say that I want to do it, that it's these names that it's a reciprocated relationship that someone's requested. Can I be your friend? And you say, yes, I grant you friendship, right? And the way you got that email is because you went along and there was a button there in your blog post, in your blog, and it said add. And you go click it, right? Now it comes up, it's going to ask you for your email, right? And it's going to send a request to the owner of the blog saying, this person wants to be your friend. That person then receives this email, and there'll be 2 links in the email, approve or deny. You hit that button, an email is sent to you who've requested friendship. If he approves, give me a second, dude. If he approves, or she approves the friendship, your name goes onto his list, and his name goes onto your list. Now you can ask the question.
Okay, how do we prevent misuse?
Okay, you ready to catch this? Because we got to get this online. 1, 2, 3. That's what I'm talking about. Question.
Okay, so how do we prevent misuse?
Misuse like?
So somebody starts spamming the add button, or somebody inputs somebody else's email, or
okay, first of all, are you asking me this as the manager of the project, the senior programmer, the programmer of the CSS, docs, or testing? Under what role are you asking me that question? Because I will give you 5 different answers. All of them? Okay, here we go. As the manager, I think any decent manager would say, we want to prevent spamming. As a senior programmer, I would say, dude, just check the email, check the IP address, on duplicates, reject. As the programmer, I would say, talk to your senior manager about how to write code that compares IP addresses or emails. As a CSS guy, I would say, yes, I recommend that the text that's displayed over this button be in sans serif in red, because I really believe in drop shadows, right? And then as the docs person, you would say, well, you know, that would go into the section called spam prevention. And then testing, I would say, just beat the hell out of it and see if you can break it. All right, does that give you your answer? Yes. Okay. Keep the mic for a second. Okay, so that is the second project. It is an implementation of DISO friending. Do you know what DISO is? Steve, you want to give them, do you know about DISO and Chris Messina? No. All right, so Chris Messina was with the Civic Space who did the Howard Dean campaign, then was one of the key programmers on Flock. Then he and his woman Tara Hunt started these concepts of bar camps. He's one of the key guys in open social and all the open standards. He's known as Factory Joe, and good friend, and one of the leading open web programmers. And so he started an organization called DISO, which stands for Distributed Social Networking, or Distributed Social Objects. And is the one who started the activity streams standardization effort, which is happening right now. Facebook already supports a standardized markup language for activity streams, the same one that MySpace does. So you could take a MySpace feed and put it into Facebook or vice versa. Now we just got to get Twitter to agree to that standard, okay? So that's DISO. I call it DISO friending, because I kind of handed it to Chris and said, hey, this could be one of the other projects. And the moment that this gets working, Chris will take that plugin and put it into his blog, and he'll be one of the people that will be testing. Okay? Joseph Smar of Plaxo will also do some testing for us, as will David Recordin. Okay? All right, so that's the second project. The third project, I left a little bit nebulous. I want it to be this shared XML object store. It can store web celebs, it can store events, it can store whatever. But the idea is it's got APIs on it. The outline describes that data, and that's really all I'm defining it as. Okay? The fourth project is a modification and changes to my existing people aggregator platform to add in modules and components and functionality into it, okay? Of which Google Friend Connect might be an example, the Janrain RPX identity layer, and really just even adding the outline into it so that every person's profile page, the home page, would have these self-descriptive outlines baked into the page. And the fifth one was a Google Maps project, but really, I just think it's really useful, really helpful, whether it's Google or Yahoo or Microsoft, for you all to learn their protocols, and really Facebook too, how to create add-ons and build things that work within those environments. Okay, so I'd really highly recommend you guys geek out on all that. Okay, now I have some predefined notions of who should be managers, and that would be the natural non-programmers. John, is it okay if I buttonhole you and typecast you? Professor Klein? I mean, is there anything else? You want to do documentation or testing? Testing. All right, there you go. And do you have one in particular you'd like to test? Keep thinking. Okay, Megan, which one would you like to manage? Okay, I'll give you number 5, okay? Megan's gonna manage this one. Okay, now, Matt, were you really sincere that you really just wanted to be a manager? You really want to try that ego thing? And... Okay, that's fair. Is there one particular thing you want to manage? Number 2. All right. Who else has just got that leadership thing burning their butt? Just going to take over their psyche and just drive them up to the sky. Okay, well, I'll interpret that as nobody. All right, now let's go to that very trepid thing called senior programmer. Unless you know how to build this, don't volunteer for this. Who would like to do number 1? Come on! Don't make me get my flashlight or my little burner. Nobody wants number 1. How about number 2? Come on! Scaredy cats. How about number 3? Number 2? 3. Remind me your name. Josh. Hit it. Number 4. Come on. All right, how about number 5? Zach. For number 5? Yeah. All right.
What about senior program?
That's senior program. Well, dude, I mean, all right. Well, now what name is conspicuously missing from the senior programmers on this board? Which one, dude? 1, okay. So we need senior programmers for 2 and 4. Can't hear you, what? Switch to 1 for manager, because you want to manage Steve. All right, that's fine. All right. Continuing on, we now need senior programmers for 2 and 4. Come on, who's got some balls? Some testicles hanging between his legs, ready to show off, to strut out down the street. But Barbie, here's the thing. You said you want to do testing or docs, right? Right? Do you want to do senior programming? No. Then I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to the potential senior programmers here. Don't get me started on the nipples versus penises. I mean, clearly you are a woman. All right. Come on, 2 other for 2 or 4. Come on, dudes. Really, you all just punked out. You want like the little, I'm going to go through and add the semicolon tasks? That's your idea of programming? All right, and I don't know your name. Rob. And which one do you want? 2. All right, Rob, thank you. All right, we're going to move on beyond the trying to squeeze the pimple to burst out the pus thing. And let's move into just programmers, just normal programmer guys. So, who wants to work on number 1 with Steve? And this is my chance to get to know your names again. Adam. Okay. With Rob on number 2. Dan. With Josh on number 3. Dan. Another Dan. With nobody on number 4. Okay. How about with Zach and Megan? Beautiful. 3. Keep your hands up. Name. Steve. John. And blue shirt. Brian. We have a lot of great code over here. And Cody. Brian, Cody, John, and Steve are going to work with Zach and Megan. That's a kick-ass team. All right? Now, dude, you're kind of new, right?
Me?
Yeah. You visited? You've been here?
I've been here before, yeah.
What's your name?
Robert.
And what do you do?
Nothing.
Do you want to graduate, or are you just like a trust fund kid who likes to give money to?
Sleep in a lot. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't really like alarm clocks.
So you want to do testing and QAs at it, or?
I don't really want to do anything.
You want to do anything? Okay, fine. How about you, next sir? What do you want to do?
CSS, HTML. I don't care which project.
Beautiful. And what's your name?
My name's Dave.
Dave. Okay, hold on. See, Dave knows the low-hanging fruit. What was the other CSS guy? Jim, you want to do CSS?
Yeah,
for number 2. Okay? All right. Other CSS. There was somebody else who said they knew CSS. You were the only one? So we might have to get you guys to help with the others, okay? All right. And so, John Klein, which one did you want to test on, did you say? You said 5. Okay, great. All right. Good, because it looks like there's going to be a lot of code that will need to be tested. Okay, other testers. Have you volunteered for anything yet?
You know what I'll do? I'm a little rusty. Put me Dave. Anyone needs CSS, I can do some reading.
And your name is?
David.
Another David. Okay, so we've got 1, 2. We're going to put you over here, David. The CSS. Okay? And Zach, what do you want to do, dude? Are you up here yet? You're Jim? You're Steve on 5. Coolio. And got you down. Got you. Which one of these you want to do?
Number 3.
Number 3 testing? Or QA? Documentation. Barbie, okay? Okay, now, more docs. Felix, come on. One docs? All right. I'm sorry, I missed that. What? That's coolio. Tim?
I was going to go for possibly programming on something.
Well, all right, so you could hook up with Rob and Dan on 2. Got plenty for 5, so really it's 2 or 3. All right, I'm going to give you 2. I'm going to put you on 2, all right? 3, and name again. Matt. Another Matt. Felix. For documentation, okay. Whose name is not up here?
I do anything for, I guess, number 1, programmer down, like CSS or
Okay.
whatever.
Well, we got Dave for CSS. So docs and testing. Well, dude, someone's got to do it.
I can help program for that.
And what's your name? Eric. Right, Eric, look, here's the challenge that Matt has. Matt, welcome to my life. Because not everything's so clean in life, dude. I mean, let's put it this way. As you're putting on the black fingernail polish, once in a while it falls over onto the cuticle. You know what I'm saying? And drips onto the table. So life is not clean all the time. And that's how you can do with your team like that, dude. You got to clean up the cuticles. All right? All right, who else is not, whose name is not on the board? You started the whole thing. Copping the attitude like you got the arm stretched out, you're too good for us. So,
But are you going to do number 4?
well, dude, I mean, you see how, well, dude, it's how anarchy works. It's anarchy.
So if people don't want to do it, it's not going to get done?
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I'm really spacing out today.
Okay, I can tell you that those other 4 projects are starting from scratch. There is no precedent. There is no code. You will have to start with hello world and build from there. Okay? That means all the user interface, all the thing, every single thing has to be started from scratch. When you start with 1,000,000 lines of code, it's almost the opposite. And so it's a different kind of intellectual challenge to try to figure out how to read something, understand it, insert yourself right here, and then test it. It's a different kind of thing. But by the way, it's probably more likely what you'll find out in the workplace than creating things from scratch yourself. So that's one benefit for it. The other benefit is that is the code that we're going to be giving away to everybody. So it's kind of a community project kind of thing. But if you don't have to do it, you don't want to do it.
I would be interested in trying to manage that. I'm just not sure
Okay, and then what was your name again? David. Okay. All right, well, we'll put you down as the brave soul. In fact, here's another good lesson from life. Maybe you need to get into your recruiting mode. Tell everybody why they need to join your group. Right? Okay. So you can see what I've been getting at here is I'm trying to change the feel here. This is not just about listening to words and buzzwords. We're going to try to write some code. All right? And I'm going to try to communicate all the different things I can do about writing code in lots of different configurations and once it gets up and running. So why are the chairs here? Because we're going to break up this proscenium relationship of me to you, and we're going to have every week a different team get up. We're going to talk about what their spec is, what their methodology is, what their documentation is, how they plan on doing it, what their protocols are, what their schema looks like, their interpretation, and we're all going to learn from each other. Right? Because that's how it works in the real world. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend. Thank you, Ed.